Well, welcome everybody to our biweekly webinar here hosted with New Path Title and Real Trade. Glad to have you all here. Of course, it's an honor to have you, Jim, here hosting this webinar. We've been doing it now for almost 2 years now. You know that we've been doing the webinar. I was looking at some of our past shows, and our content has got more sharp and more attendees. It's been a great journey so far. But for people who don't know, I'm Ryan Poole. I'm a real estate agent, just like yourselves. Been doing this for over 20 years in the trenches with you all. Also, I'm the founder of Real Trade, which is an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. As Jim likes to say, we're the home of the double dip, is because we don't actually sell leads off your listings. So we allow buyers and sellers to go directly to you and contact you on your listings, which is awesome. They can also comment on your listings and you can answer them back. So we're real estate made social, but it's pretty awesome to have Jim here. He's a heck of an entrepreneur. Not only is he a real estate attorney with James Brown Law, he's the founder of New Path Title and the awesome closing software Title Leap. And this is a great show we're going to have today. I actually have questions here on portability that I'm in the trenches with this one about a divorce and some other stuff of who gets the portability. So it's going to be a good show, Jim.
Thanks for the intro, Ryan. It's hard to live up to all that hype. Now, my goal for you guys is I want to give you a show that's really concise and is relevant, right? And topics you won't hear anyplace else. So I try to take stuff that I hear and I get calls on and break it down into little rules and things you can remember to make your practice easier and more efficient. Don't forget, we got the crossing for cystic fibrosis coming up. I'm going to ask you guys all to give. This is the best cause on the planet. The day after the CF race, every year I say this is so much work. This is the last year I'm going to do it. Every year, the day after the event, I'm getting texts from people all over the world thanking me for our participation, the money, and the heartfelt stories about their kids. And it just rips at your heartstrings. You can't not give when you hear the stories of these kids' journeys. Title advance, you guys know all about it. Use it. It saves deals. Now with equities getting skinnier and skinnier, I'm seeing it more and more. I just had one the other day where the woman thought she had one mortgage and she had two, and her expectation of the closing, the seller expectation of the closing was a lot less than she was thinking because her HELOC, which she insisted was not a mortgage and did not have to be paid off at closing. A HELOC, home equity line of credit, is a mortgage. Like and subscribe. Our closing cost calculator is updated, and there are no dumb questions. Put them in the chat. Text me 24/7. I love getting your questions. Anybody who calls me and the first thing they say is, I apologize for taking your time. The first thing I tell everybody who says that is, please don't apologize. This is the best part of my day. Because what happens is all your calls turn into issues for us to talk about with the other agents. So never start your conversation with me, I'm sorry for the call. Time-saving tools at the end. Ryan's going to show you a bunch of stuff you can do to save time in your deals. And you can text me any future topics. Without further ado, let's jump into this thing. Let's see. I'm doing this with one screen today, so it's a little tricky for me. All right. Ryan, are you looking at the
Yeah, we can see the
outline?
outline. Yep.
All right. So Florida property taxes. Unfortunately, I start our conversation many times by saying, this is something I see agents not nailing every time. And this is another one of those topics where there's a lot of information out there. I won't say there's a lot of not truthful information, but the rules are really easy. And I'm going to give you some ways to break it down. Today is May 20th, 2025. Taxes are not sexy, but they're the nuts and bolts of our business. It can make or break a deal or bust one at the last minute. And a great way to set yourself apart from the other 50,000 agents in Palm Beach County. The laws are changing. Stay abreast of the laws. You can text me 24/7. I'm not great at email. If you guys have a question, if you send me a text, I'll get right back to you. Unfortunately, I get people that say, I emailed you last week, and I get 400 a day now, at least 300 a day. If you like the way we work, you can write us into paragraph 20, regardless of who's paying for title, and we can be your closing agent. You'll get all kinds of great time-saving tools. Market brief. Agents have been telling me they like this more and more, so I've spent a little more time on it every month, every show. Active listings are up 44% in Miami-Dade and 46% in Broward and 30% in Palm Beach County. Thank you for the thumbs up, Fed. I love that. And so it's reaching the highest level. This is what I didn't know in nearly a decade. Median prices remain stable, but with price increases expected 4 to 6.5%, especially in luxury and waterfront. Demand for luxury homes in Boca and Delray and Miami is the prime zip code and remains fierce for the 1 million price point and up. New construction and turnkey properties are the target as buyers want modern amenities, low maintenance, and energy efficiency. So there was a great study of buyers that was conducted not by Florida Realtors, but by another outside consulting firm. And more so than ever, if you have sellers that are telling you they're going to sell as is, encourage them to make those upgrades. I just talked to a woman the other day and she wanted to sell the property and she kept saying, we'll let the buyer take care of it. Those are not the target properties. These people are coming and they're relocating within state or they're coming from out of state and they want turnkey and energy efficiency and low maintenance. So that makes new construction real attractive. Mortgage rates are hovering between 6.5 and 6.8 and expected to drop by year's end to 6.3. Yay! Out-of-state buyers continue, but the migration has slowed. And many older long-term residents are cashing out and moving north. So we're seeing this a lot at our office. We're seeing a lot of people who are taking the money off the table and getting out. Me personally, I'm doing that a little bit myself. And if you know people who are on the fence, now is the time to motivate them in that direction. That is the wave. All right, another tip I'm going to go over real quickly. Beware of time vampires. We can see them a mile away, but sometimes in our desire to make a deal happen, we invest more time than we should. I am guilty of this. But you can see the writing on the wall. There are many more rookies around us than we even think. Magnolia Real Estate School is now offering $49 real estate training to become a licensed Florida realtor. $49. 70% of all agents did less than 5 deals, do less than 5 deals in a year. 70%. Just pause on that one. How much do I learn off of every single deal we do? How much do you guys learn off of every single deal? If you're doing less than 5 deals a year and so many of these people are doing one, you can't learn. And so you're just investing time in this other agent and it just is fruitless. So there's an example. I lend hard money. We have a group. Wednesday, I got a request for a waterfront investment property loan. True story, you can't even make this up. This investor sent me their bullet point document from their investor guru that was like how to buy this property, fix this property, and flip this property. The first thing I said to the person was, how many deals did you do last year? And then the thing went radio silent. You see the warning flags a million miles away, and we don't want to ask the question because we don't want to derail a deal early. But the reality is there's so many rookies out there, and we're going to invest so much time. And that you have to figure out how to market, not burn calories. I'm in another deal right now, and it's another seller that just has completely unrealistic expectations. It's ironically the seller that I mentioned earlier that had the home equity line of credit. The seller's agent didn't do any level of expectation setting with this seller, and now it's at the title shop, and now I'm dealing with the buyer and the seller mutually, and it's marginal as to whether it's going to close it. Everybody invested a ton of time. We all want deals. Say the hard stuff up front that your future self says thank you for, if you know what I mean. SELF. Ask the hard questions you tend to not want to ask. But when you do ask them, you might get the answer you don't want to hear, but it's going to save you a ton of time. The best questions sometimes are the ones you least want to hear the answer on, but it's proven for me fruitless time and time again, or fruitful, asking those hard questions. Now we're back to the main topic, Florida Homestead. 3 main benefits. Burn these into your brain. If you recite them quickly, your seller is going to think you're a genius. Your buyer who's selling multiple properties is going to think you're a genius. Protection from judgment creditors. up to $50,000 deduction from value, and a 3% cap on the increase in value. Don't say, you know, you're unsure. Don't say there's a few benefits. Just say those 3 rules. Those are the principal benefits that everybody wants to know.
Yeah. What if you're single? If you're single, is it still up to 50,000 or is it 25,000?
25.
25.
That's why I said up to 50K.
Yeah.
So, but when you're looking for summaries, right? When you're trying to impress your clients, you're always looking for single, little tiny sound bites for very complicated rules. And so what I try to give you is the bare minimum rule that you can recite quickly and easily. You can go to a million other podcasts and find outlines with paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of rules. That's not what I'm here to do. All right, so there's a 3% cap on the increase in taxable value. It's not 10, it's not 5, it's not the CPI unless the CPI is less than 3%, it's 3%. Elements to qualify. You have to live in the property by January 1. Period, full stop. That's as simple a rule as you can get. It has to be your primary residence, and you have to apply before March 31st of that year you live there on January 1st. Don't overcomplicate it. I hear it all the time. We'll go into the overcomplications I hear. What defines primary residence? Here's where we get into the nitty-gritty, and this is where more confusion comes up. Reside with the intent to primarily live there. You don't have to be there so many months out of the year. You could be a traveling person that works in multiple countries throughout the year. You come back to Florida for a few weeks here and a few weeks there. That's your primary residence. That's where you intend to live. You could have vacation homes all over the place, and you intend to live in Florida. That's your intent to permanently reside there. That's your homestead. Florida driver's license, or if no license, evidence you relinquished your driver's license. Florida vehicle registration, so you've got your cars registered there. Florida voter ID card. Address on your U.S. taxpayer tax return. You don't need all these, but these are the things that the Florida Department of Revenue is looking for. Must be a U.S. citizen or qualified permanent resident. Don't write this stuff down, you guys. It's all available in the outline. We'll email it to you shortly, and you can go to our website and get it all the time. Where your employer is located, obviously thought up before pre-COVID, but it's one of the criterias. It's not definitive, but it's one of the things they look at. Where did you file a declaration of domicile? So sometimes people take the extra step of filing a declaration of homestead or a declaration of domicile. They want to make sure everybody knows this is where they live. It's a document we can put in the public record for you, or you can do yourself. The address of where the kids attend school, bank statement addresses, and utility bill addresses. Does anybody have any questions about that? Probably the biggest single question that I get all the time is, can spouses have separate primary homes? Thank you, Australia. No, they can't. Don't let anybody convince you that they can. There are bullies out there. There are bullies on the other side of your transaction. They're going to try to impress you. The agent on the other side of the table is going to try to impress you that they know more than you, and they're going to do it by telling you emphatically that they can, and they've done it a million times. Can't happen. And Tajay and I have seen the penalties for people who take separate homesteads are significant, and they do catch you. I'm not going to tell you they catch everybody. Obviously, I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but they do. The Department of Revenue does catch up. And then you got to pay it off before you sell the property. It's a lien on the property. And it's a lien on all the other properties that that person owns. You cannot have primary in other states and Florida. So you can't have a primary in Massachusetts. I had a client the other day with a primary home in Massachusetts. They were taking the Massachusetts version of Homestead on, and you can't take Homestead simultaneously in Florida. You get one primary residence. Think back to the criteria we just went over. Where your car is registered, where are you filing your taxes from, where's your voter ID card. Those are all homestead benefits. There's one homestead benefit I didn't put on here. So here's your bonus for attending. There is a benefit for homestead if you sell your property and you park the money in an account and you buy another homestead down the road, that money is protected from judgment creditors. So if you have a homestead and let's say you didn't pay your credit card bill a million years ago, and that credit card bill sits in the public record for 20 years as a valid lien on real property, but the property you're selling is your homestead, we can file what's called a notice of homestead so that that bill does not get paid in your property sale. The notice of homestead is it's authorized by Florida statute, and that creditor can't collect on the money. And then if you park that money from the sale of your homestead for a reasonable period of time, Florida courts have said 1 year, then that property is exempt from judgment creditors for that year. Can you park the money forever? No. At some point, the creditor can pop up and say, hey, that money's been sitting there so long, I'm entitled to a piece of it. But if you sell your homestead and you leave the money in an account for a year or less, most Florida courts tell you it's exempt from judgment creditors. You could buy your new homestead a year later, and that money's protected.
That's great.
There are a ton of other homestead exemptions based on the 3 criteria above, or more than the 3 above. Older than 65, unlimited income, and these are all additional benefits. Widowed, blind, or disabled. Line of duty, disabled, first responder, or surviving spouse. On the property appraiser's website, there are these lists of additional exemptions. So you want to hear these little trigger words when you're talking to your client, and then with those little trigger words, you can go to the website and see if they qualify for any of this stuff. Disabled vet or surviving spouse of a vet. And that's the important one to remember also, surviving spouse of a vet. The list is typically available on your local property appraiser's site. All right. How is market value determined? Typically, the tax-based market value is 85% of the actual market value. The property appraiser has a relatively sophisticated valuation tool, and then they back out 15% and they assume average condition on an arm's length sale. Many realtors tell their clients the purchase price is the taxable value, full stop. I just had one the other day, an agent that I know has been in the business for more than 20 or 30 years, and they were telling me that it's the sale price that determines the value. It's not how the value is determined. It is absolutely determined on the comps, and it's the comps for the year in which the property is purchased. It's not the comps up until you're going to live in the property or do whatever. It's the comps in the year the property is purchased. So if the values are rising and you purchase early in the year, that's going to affect your taxable value. If properties are depreciating rapidly and you bought earlier in the year, that's going to drive your value down. And I saw this happen in the mortgage foreclosure crisis in 2009 and 10 and 11. And then when properties started rebounding in value, people got a much different tax bill than they anticipated. Even agents that explained the way the taxing rules worked great, because values changed that year and the comps are for that year in which the property was purchased, it dramatically affected the value of the final tax bill. Why 85%? So that homeowners aren't paying taxes on commissions and closing costs. If anybody asks why they're so low, it's because they back out 15% for closing costs and commissions, and then they're more conservative, right? We all know that closing costs and commissions don't cost 15%, but the property appraiser errs on the low side of valuations. But that's the only reason there's a disconnect. And values are assessed as of December 31st on the year that you apply. So when you apply for a homestead, your valuation is going to be based on all the comps of that year up until December 31st when you apply. Anybody have any questions on that?
Wendy mentioned, doesn't the property appraiser website, I guess where you put in that calculator, say the purchase price on the calculator?
Yeah. The portability, they have a calculator, and then they have a portability calculator. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Homestead basics, portability. Everybody knows what portability is. It's hard to find the exact data, but it's believed as many as half of all Florida sales are eligible for portability, but roughly only half actually receive the benefit. Half of that half that get it, only half get the benefit, and that equals about $5 billion a year annually.
Jeez.
Trust me, the Florida Department of Revenue is not going to chase you to tell you that they missed out, that they got an extra 5 billion in taxes. But what does that mean to agents? Right? That means that there's a great source for opportunity for you to go out there and educate some buyers and sellers and send your mailer out there and say, hey, do you guys know Florida Portability? Over $5 billion a year. It's estimated $5 billion a year Florida taxpayers are giving away in portability. Sign up with me for your next sale or purchase, and I'll get you, that and all the more benefits. It resonates. I listened to a podcast and they had an open air call in and they were having buyers and sellers. There was a podcast done last year and they were having buyers and sellers call in. And it's got a big agent following, and they were calling in. There were agents that were getting blown away because they had no idea about the portability. You guys might know about it. I'm not saying you guys don't, but just don't assume that your agent on the other side of the table does. Portability came into being in 2008 and Save Our Homes. Portability is a separate filing from Homestead. I'm going to give you the website, but it is a separate filing. I can tell you a horror story about people who get it. I can tell you wonderful stories about people who got it automatically, but I can tell you a horror story about a friend of mine who didn't get it, and he thought he would be getting it. And I advised him to apply for it. Everybody gets busy. He's got a young family. He didn't. It cost him a lot of money. And I'll tell you how much you can actually save in Florida Homestead. His was about $7,000 a year. Unlike Homestead, there is no filing deadlines. A homeowner can apply at any time, but you can never get back missed portability from prior years. We're just talking about portability, and we're going to go over what portability is exactly. Applies to a move-in within the state anywhere. I heard agents telling other agents the other day in our lobby that portability only applies within Palm Beach County. No, you sell Miami property and you have a buyer that wants to go to Port St. Lucie. They're selling their condo and taking a bath, but they've been there forever. They can take that portability to Port St. Lucie and they can get a huge reduction in their taxes. If not, in some of these cases in these Miami condos, I'm seeing people wipe their taxes out to next to nothing. When they're selling their used Miami condo or their used Broward or their used West Palm Beach condo and they're taking a bath, how good is it to remind that seller who's going to be a buyer that they're going to do really, really well on the taxes on their new property? Don't miss those little value proposition opportunities.
Yeah.
Those are the things that can really help you guys solidify deals. I know I'm preaching to the choir. Before you sell, make sure the value is as high as it can be. This maximizes the amount that can be taken to the new property. If you're trying to maximize portability, make sure the market value, if you're trying to time it, make sure the market value of the property you're selling, the market value as determined by the property appraiser is as high as it can be. I'm going to show you in a minute why that's going to help you. Best portability explainer I've found so far is this one. It's at the St. John's property appraisers page. It's simple. It's easy. If you want to bring this to your homeowners, buyers, or sellers, this is something that can help people make that move because it's such an easy illustration to understand. So here's their existing home. You're selling the property, $400,000 is the market value. And the assessed value, right? You've got the market value and then you've got the assessed value. They've been in the house for a little while and the assessed value is $250,000. Their portability benefit is $150,000. Can everybody see this clearly?
Yep. Yeah, I can.
When they go to upsize or they go to move laterally or even downsize, the market value, let's just say it's $600,000, you're going to take 150 grand off the property for the portability, right? This 150 right here. They're going to be taxed at 450,000 less the 50,000. They're only going to be paying taxes on 400,000. Guess what? They upsized and they're right back to paying the same tax. Win. Don't miss that opportunity. Sorry if I get excited, but I can't tell you how many times I see Unique laughing at me. I can't tell you how many times I see agents not taking the easy win. So here's a downsizing example. Before I go back into it, I want to say Alex is joining us. I know he's down in the Miami market. I see a ton of Miami agents missing this opportunity as people are leaving Miami to go to Port St. Lucie. Don't forget this piece. Fed, what's going on?
Sorry to interrupt, but again,
Yeah.
the benefit does not expire.
Oh, we're going to go over that. Yeah, it does.
Mm.
And that's another rule that you guys have to know, because I see agents, and I had one the other day, a longtime agent, 10-year, 15-year agent, misexplained it, cost the client a ton of money. So we'll go over that in a minute. Now, here's the downsizing thing. Market value. So you've got this same $150,000 benefit. The market value of the new property is $200,000. It's roughly half of what they're selling. So you only get $75,000 of benefit minus the $50,000. So now you're $200,000. Why can't I advance this down? Maybe that's the whole card. All right, so now you're $200,000 down. A portion of this thing is covered by the screen, that the little dialog box. I can't really see what it's saying at the very bottom, but you got the market value of the acquired property is 200 grand. So it's half of the sold property, less the portability benefit, which is going to be half. So now the assessed value is 125. They take their new homestead, so now they're going to be paying taxes on $75,000. I can't see the screen, Ryan. I'm assuming the bottom line on that downsize is $75,000.
Yes, correct. You're
Yeah.
correct too.
All right. So that's a great illustration for you guys to use when you're explaining portability to your people, your buyers and your sellers. It's a link in the outline. And then here is the link to portability application, Palm Beach County Property Appraisers page. And they have all these great little links, including all the stuff you guys use all the time.
Wendy has a question.
Go ahead, Wendy.
So going back to the comment I made in the chat, when you go to the tax calculator, it says enter your purchase price.
Yep.
It doesn't say your taxable market value. So every time I've used this calculator, it's wrong because
You're gonna go ahead. I'm sorry.
but you know, if they're paying $550 for the house,
Yep.
but I'm telling them taxes are based on the market value, we have argued because they're like, well, why does it say what's the purchase price? So is there a better calculator that we could be using?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And typically what I've seen agents do, and I haven't done it myself, but what I've heard agents do is they're going 85% of the purchase price. But that can be problematic because you could be buying at a discount in a strong neighborhood with a lot of comps that are higher. Or values could be rising over the course of the year and you're buying early in the year. It'd be great if there was it was a science, but you just have to understand the dynamic of how the thing works. And so if you're buying at a discount and you're pumping in that value, then it's probably closer than not. And if you're buying at a premium and everything in the neighborhood is selling a little lower, you kind of have to know what's going on, and you're just going to have to ballpark it when you explain it to your client and couch it and all those little variables.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yes, but I have told them it's based on the market value, and and they say, well, it says the purchase price right here. So then I started second guessing myself. Is it the market
No.
value or is it the purchase price?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want, agents to be aware, because I had this happen literally like within the last couple of weeks. Is I had a buyer that bought last year. The property was homesteaded, and then his taxes jumped way up, obviously, when he bought it because he was an investor. And he said, "Hey, you never told me about the taxes going up this much." And he got really upset at me. And I actually found an email. It said that this property is homesteaded. Your taxes are going to go up. And I had to re-forward him that email from like a year ago, when he bought. So that's a big one, especially if the property is homesteaded, because he was gonna lose the homestead. He
And the
wasn't-
duration of the homestead, right?
Yeah,
It's
I know, it was like,
homesteaded, and if it's been homesteaded for a year, it's one thing. I see Australia nodding her head, but if it's been homesteaded for 20
Yeah.
years, like we saw a property the other day,
yeah,
you know, and here's another example of when buyer's agents have to do seller's agent jobs, or, you know, you have to understand all sides of the dynamic. And so if you're buying a property, one of the things you might want to do, and we're going to get into it more in the at the end of the outline, is set expectations, right? And if you see the sellers own the property for 10 or 15, or like we saw the other day, 20 years, and their taxable value was so unbelievably low, let the seller know that this thing is going to reset. There's going to be a tax bill to reckon with in the future. Can you sell homestead property, rent, buy a new home, claim the new home as homestead, and get portability on the new home? Yes. So you can sell your homestead, rent or buy a new home, claim the new home as homestead, and get portability on the new home. So you could actually rent property for a year or more, and we're going to go over what defines how long the portability can sit, and then get portability on the new house. Many agents tell their clients, you have to buy a homestead. That's not the law. So Florida Statute 193, 155(8), a property owner who establishes a new homestead within 3 years of abandoning their previous homestead can transfer the assessment to the new homestead. Is the taxing authority ever going to catch up to that and say, oh, by the way, Ryan, you missed your portability, we're going to give it to you? Absolutely not. So that's something as an agent you want to tell your client. They're downsizing, they're doing whatever, they're building a property, they're waiting for construction to be finished out, you're trying to get them into a rental property. Yes, you can park your portability for up to 3 years and get the portability benefit in your new property. Is that clear?
yeah.
So
It
it's
is clear, yes.
but it's 3 years from the date. I cannot tell you. Okay, it's 3 years from the date of sale to the date of acquisition. I'm sorry, it's not 3 years from the date of sale to the date of acquisition. It's 3 years from the year you sold into the year you purchased. So it could be as short as a year and a few months. If you sold late in year 1 and you purchased early in year 3, that time frame is going to be really tight that you can transfer the portability. But if you sold early in year 1 and purchased late in year 3, you would get the full 3 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You don't want to explain it. You get 3 years from the date you sell. You want to explain it. You get 3 taxing years. So if your client's selling late in year 1, they can buy late in year 3 or early in year 3, but they won't get a full 3 years. That's come up a few times lately. All right, here's the one that Ryan was most interested in, apportionment. So I had this come up the other day. It comes up periodically. Somebody called me, and it's the exact issue, and we were doing it in the podcast. I told them to sit in, and they're here today. Do you know if divorcing parties sell their home, they can assign the portability rights between them? They can actually take the capped value and assign it between them, just like any other marital asset. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, a divorcing couple is selling their homestead home, and there is a $500,000 portability benefit. Remember that little illustration we just saw? There was a $150,000 benefit. Let's say that benefit is $500,000. In the example, the portability benefit has an approximate value of $10,000 a year.
incredible.
That's $10,000 that they're putting in their pocket. That's not a fictitious $10,000 of savings. That's $10,000 they're not sending to the tax collector. And so if you think about a 3 or 5 year average homeowner time period, that's $30,000 to $50,000. I mean, I have a house right now we're buying. We're taking the full homestead portability. I expect to be there 10 years. That's $100,000.
It's a lot of money.
That could be worth 30 to 50 grand. Now let's say one divorcing party. Now here's the kicker. Now let's say one divorcing party wants to rent and one wants to buy. So you got separate interests. You got one person wants to go to a rental home, one person wants to go to a purchased home. And the party that wants to buy could have the renting party assign the portability to them and have a smaller tax burden to potentially afford more homes. So this is what happened the other day. We had two people divorcing. One person was going to move in with their boyfriend or girlfriend, I forget what it was, and the other person wanted to buy a new property. And so as a marital asset assignment, the spouse that was going to live with the boyfriend gave their portability to the other spouse. Does everybody follow me?
Yep.
So now you're on the divorcing side, you've got an assignment of assets from one spouse to the other, just like you would do if the one person was getting a house, a marital home, and one person wasn't. But from a real estate agency perspective, now you've got a great tool that you can drop in the laps of your seller and say, hey, here's another asset you guys could be negotiating.
Yeah.
And that actually saved their deal and made a transaction
So,
happen.
so let me ask you this question, Jim. Can we dig into mine real quick? The issue that I have
Yeah.
with the client. So I got a client currently right now. Actually, after this call, we're going to be writing an offer in Flagler Point for like a $300,000 condo. Well, here's the thing: she was married, got divorced, still own the home in Versailles in Wellington. They bought it like 15 years ago, for 500 grand. It's worth about 1.2. So they have over 500,000 in portability there, but they haven't sold that home yet. And part of the agreement in the divorce that they were going to split the proceeds. This portability now, and let's say she buys this condo next month, it closes next month, that other home has not sold yet. When can she bring over that portability? Is it within that 3 years then?
Well, how is the house titled right now, the relinquished house? How the sold house, the house to sell?
It
How
hasn't sold yet. So it hasn't sold yet.
No, but how is it titled? Is it titled to her alone, or is it a marital residence, or?
I think it's to both of them still.
It would have to, I mean, if it's titled to her alone,
It's not to her alone. It would be to both of them, a married couple still.
yeah. So if it's titled to them jointly and it's their marital home, then
Yeah.
they're going to have portability, and one of the two of them has got to take it. So right now, husband and wife are in title, but when the house sells, only one of them wants the portability, it sounds like, right?
I mean, that's an uncomfortable question, but I'm going to have to, get into it with my buyer now that she's buying the condo, because it basically, right? I mean, she has 500,000. They have 500,000 in portability there.
That's the apportionment thing. I mean, they
Yeah,
could
I know.
each take 250, right?
Yeah,
And that they
yeah.
could say, husband's going to go to one house, he wants a portability of 250. Wife's going to go to the other house, another house, she wants an assignment of 250. And so that's an apportionment. Or they could agree between them. Let's just say one of the spouses in the divorce is short on cash and they don't want to chip in the cash. And Ryan, the super sophisticated agent, told the husband, hey, instead of giving cash, give your share of the homestead apportionment. That
Mhm.
seller, that husband seller, is going to love you, because now they're not putting cash in the marital pot, they're putting their assignment of homestead benefit in the marital pot. I know that's abstract, but trust me,
Yeah,
when this stuff comes up, it's gold.
yeah.
And unfortunately,
But she's buying it
one out
now
of two
before.
marriages ends in divorce.
I know, but she's buying that condo now before that other property sells, right?
I
So
see a
she
lot of smiles among the group.
yes, so she has that 3 year window to sell that other property. I mean, I hope it sells. The guy's being kind of difficult and trying to get
Not
it.
3 years to sell. Once she sells, she has 3 years to buy.
Okay, 3 years to buy, but she's buying now before it sells.
If she's buying now before it sells, then she could take her portability. It's going to be her primary, right?
Yeah,
She's selling jointly titled marital home. Then
yeah.
she's going to take her portability to the new property. It gets sticky if they're not divorced yet, but
No,
if
they
they're,
are divorced. They are divorced. They're divorced now, but they still haven't sold the home. See what I'm saying? Because if
So
she
I think you would still, I don't think that changes the homestead, the portability, because it's still jointly their property. At one time it was their marital home, but it's still their homestead. I mean, they've got to be living there.
well,
It gets,
the husband's living there. She's renting a place now and he's buying a condo now.
and
So
who wants the portability? And how old is the divorce? The
the
wife.
divorce is like within a year.
Yeah. And so the wife wants the portability, she should get it. But he's got to assign his portion of the portability to her.
That's what I mean. So he'll like, cause if he hasn't sold the home yet and then he'll lose the homestead, it'll get reassessed on that house, which will be huge because it's worth about 1.1. They bought it for like 400 and homesteaded it. So there's a huge,
Right. But I'm not sure if I'm missing something, but at the time that jointly held at, they're not married, but it's jointly held. So when that asset sells, it doesn't reset. The portability flows to the sellers. They're not husband and wife, a man and a woman.
Mhm,
They each get
the
a de
250.
facto 250 grand each.
Okay.
If he doesn't take it to a new property, his just expires. If she takes it to a new property, she gets 250, but she'd really rather have 500 if she could, I'm sure.
Yeah, but the condo's only 300 grand.
The
So,
new one.
yep.
So she's going to be downsizing. That's
Downsizing, so
tricky.
she'll get half. So she'll get like $1.25 off.
Um, that I'd have to do the math on that one. They're selling, yeah, she's downsizing dramatically.
Yeah.
It's done on a proportional basis.
Okay.
It's a percentage basis. So if they're selling a but she's only entitled to half the proceeds. So you said it's a $1.2 million sale. So I think they're gonna tag her for 600,000. So if she gets half of the portability, it'll be, you know what I'm saying?
I know.
The
No, it's
value, the calculation for the new property isn't gonna be based on a $1.2 million sale. I think it'd be based on a 600 sale. We can talk about it some more.
All right.
Using personal property to drive down taxes, another misnomer I hear misunderstood and improperly explained all the time by almost every agent I talk to. I'll clean this up before I send it to you guys, promise. The reality is we have a whole separate podcast on mixed property sales. The long story short, your taxes are based on a comparable market analysis, not the sale price. And if audited, appraisals are needed on the real property and the personal property to whatever taxing authority might be auditing you. I had one just the other day. It was $1 million sale and they were going to claim $300,000 in personal property. I don't care if it's an Airbnb. There's not $300,000 in personal property there. Period. End of story. And it doesn't matter because your tax is going to be based on comps. So can you affect the pool of comps by driving down your purchase price? Sure, you can a little bit, but it's not going to be a dollar for dollar hit like I hear most agents explain to their clients. Does everybody follow me on that? Everybody tells their clients all the time, we're going to get a better tax break if we drive down the sale price. All right, tasting taxes after closing. Does anybody have any questions on that? And this thing here, whenever I say this, agents always look at me like I have two heads because I say, if you're ever audited, you're going to have to come up with an appraisal for the retroactively, but it's much better to have the appraisal in your file. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go out and get appraisals on the personal property and the real property. But if you're audited, that's what they're going to need. That's what the IRS is going to want. And that's what the Florida Department of Revenue is going to want. Chasing taxes after the closing happens. Does everybody know what I'm talking about here? This is where the agents burn tons of calories after the closing happens because they didn't understand how tax prorations worked. Taxes are prorated. Tajay, you had a good one the other day. You were chasing around the office for a long time. What was the fundamental flaw that agents could have done to stay ahead of the ball and made that not such a painful experience for everybody? Christian, if you're there, they're probably buried deep in deals. So basically, exactly what we talked about. You've got long time sold property that's homesteaded. or you've got new construction that's selling and that you need to come up with a just valuation. Is everybody familiar with this provision in the contract? Can you see my contract form, Ryan?
Yeah, I can see it, Jim.
So at the very bottom of the prorations section, force majeure, prorations. If property improvements are made on line 498, if there are completed improvements on the real property prior to January 1st of the year of closing, which improvements were not in existence on January 1st of the prior year, so it's a new construction or something that was heavily renovated, then taxes shall be prorated based on the prior year's millage in an equitable assessment to be agreed to between the parties. Nobody in the history of me closing files 400 a year has ever done that. You gotta explain the contract to the parties if you have property that's either been new construction on an old lot or a significant remodel. It's in the contract. And the property appraiser will not step in, so that the fallback says, failing which, request shall be made of the county property appraiser for an informal assessment. I have never seen the property appraiser step up and do an informal assessment.
Wow.
Bonus topic, chasing taxes after the close. That's it. Using personal property. Yep, that's it, you guys. 10:48, we're 12 minutes ahead of time. Do you have any questions? We covered a lot. I know it wasn't sexy, but I'm telling you, if you understand this stuff, you can distinguish yourself and you can make deals happen where otherwise, that apportionment stuff that Ryan was going down the rabbit hole on, it's real. One out of every two marriages end in divorce, and the divorce usually ends up in a property sale, either an assignment or a sale. And that stuff, those little things can help. Oh, I didn't go over the bonus topic. We talked about it at the beginning. You know, if you like the way we work, you can write us in paragraph 20. I had an agent call me the other day and they asked me, oh, we're in a Seller County. It was Orlando. We're in a Seller County title. Can we write you guys in? And I said, yeah, just have the seller pay for title, but in paragraph 20, write the closing agent as new path title. So we should be getting that deal. And now I can walk them through start to finish. It's a relatively complicated deal, but we'll be closing an out of town deal. And the seller will pay for title and we'll be working with the buyers. They'll choose the title company. Fed, what do you got?
Can we go over again on the market brief on detail?
Absolutely. Now you're just making me happy. You're stroking my ego. I spent a bunch of time on this. Which element or all of it?
All of it, please.
It's in the outline I'm going to send you. If anybody wants to log out, I'm not offended. If we're duplicating stuff or going over stuff you already know, active listings are up 44 to 46%. The thing that struck me about that piece of data was it's the highest level in a decade. So that's stuff that you can tell your clients when you're talking to your sellers, when you're trying to set expectations. And we do a podcast, a group meeting on Friday mornings, and I always like to make the data the bad guy, right? So nobody wants to tell the seller they're going to have to lower their price. Nobody wants to give the seller any bad news. But if you make the data the bad guy, it's just the reality. That's what the data says. It's the highest level they've been in 10 years. What do you got, Alex?
Excuse me. With regards, going back to the title, you mentioned custom and law, and I was just curious. I've heard people outside of Miami-Dade, agents outside of Miami-Dade, saying that they check the box Miami-Dade. Is that legit? Is it? So
It's
just
110% legit, but there is
Yeah.
no reason in the world why anybody should do that. It just makes things too confusing, creates too much dialogue between the attorneys and the parties and the closing agent. You just pick one or the other. I don't
Okay.
even know why that third option still exists. You know, with modern software, it doesn't matter whether we generate a deed or don't generate a deed. It's one button click on our software package and there's a deed there. So why would we ask the seller's agent to generate a deed and we're basically working for the buyer's agent? It's just creates a whole lot of unnecessary dialogue. But yeah, Alex, Agents do it all the time, new agents, old agents. It used to be a custom thing, but now I even see younger agents who don't really understand the implications doing it. It goes back to that 70% of all agents only do under 5 deals a year.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they just here in the office, this is what we check, and that's what
Yeah.
they check. And they have
Yep.
no idea why.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You bet. All right, median prices remain stable with price increases expected 4 to 6.5%. Does everybody know the difference between a median and an average and a mean? The median is the most frequently occurring sale. It's not an average. When you have a bunch of sales that could happen at the high end, or a bunch of sales that could happen at the low end, or even one sale at the low end and one sale at a high end in a small market, that drags the average up and down. But the median will stay the same. The median is the most frequently occurring sale. If you have 100 sales and 30 of them happen at $300,000, that's going to be the median. And then the other 70 are scattered all around. That median is 300,000. You might have some crazy big ones. You might have some crazy small ones, but the median won't change. It's the most frequently occurring. So they're saying the most frequently occurring sales, there will be increases. Yes, we're going to see abominable situations happening in the condo market. Yes, I'm a member of that committee. I should have signed up for the sale a year ago. I'm an idiot. I didn't listen to my own advice, but that's the reality. Demand for luxury homes in Boca Raton, Delray Palm Beach, Delray Beach, and Miami's prime zip codes remain fierce in 1 million and up. So those things are still selling, and there's lots of demand for out of town, out of state people and people moving in state. New construction and turnkey properties are the target, as buyers want more modern amenities, low maintenance, and energy efficiency. In that study I was talking about earlier, they were talking about how buyers are becoming more and more savvy and they want energy efficient homes. I don't know if you heard about it in your circles, but I certainly hear about it more and more. People are talking about insulation from floods, property efficiency, all those little things that make home ownership less expensive down the road. They're getting more and more savvy. Mortgage interest rates are hovering between 6.5 and 6.8. Tajay and Christian sound like they're super busy, but I'm wondering what they're seeing actually coming through on the mortgage and the note docs. But good news, they're expected to drop to 6.3 by the end of the year. We had a strong jobs report recently. We talked about that on our last podcast. Jobs report came out strong. Since that last podcast, there's indications that the jobs report is going to be a weakening report for the next podcast. Weakening report means we're potentially looking at a drop in interest rates. Double-edged sword, though. If you drop the income of the people, even if you drop interest rates, it might not generate sales. There's a cool migration map I looked at. It was talking about where people are coming and moving in the United States, where people are moving to in the United States. And so it was in real time, and the stream of people flowing from New York to Florida, as much as you may or may not want Florida, New Yorkers coming in, that stream was still strong. And they had a time-lapsed image, and it showed over the last 5 years. And at one point, it was this heavy stream of solid migration, and it's definitely diminishing, but it's still real. And I was in New York recently, and with a group of people, and everybody was talking about, their next move is Florida. They were young, kids were middle school age, and everybody was talking about Florida was the ultimate destination. That's anecdotal, you guys. You can't take that to the bank, but that's when I hear stuff like that, obviously confirmational bias is triggered, and I love hearing people say what you want to hear them say, but there was nobody saying we're relocating in Florida. Everybody was saying if we relocate, we're going south. And those were young people. Everybody knows about older people, selling their $2 million Jersey house they bought for 200 grand and coming to Florida, but these were younger people. Many older longtime residents are cashing out and moving north. Taj and I and Christian talk about this frequently, just what the profile is of our sellers. Again, that's anecdotal evidence. It's just what we see coming through our shop, but we're seeing people cashing out of Airbnbs. We're seeing people cashing out of properties they have a lot of pent-up equity in. The new condo rules are driving condo sales down hard, but I believe this will stabilize and prices will remain at an all-time new low. So that's just my 2 cents on the data that I read. I see condos seeking a new equilibrium. Unfortunately, it won't be the old pricing structure that we're familiar with.
Yeah. We did a great, a great show on that, on the condos and where the market was going with that. And about a couple months ago. It seems like it's happening. I'm working with some condo buyers right now, and they're getting some great deals. I mean, I'm telling, the buyers I'm working with, now's the time to make an offer and get a deal on a condo. And of
Yeah.
course, if you know how to read the structural integrity test and the reserve study, and like we went over, which you did awesome on that one webinar, Jim, it's a powerful tool, to set the buyers at ease that they're getting into a good condo, even if it is an older one.
You guys, and I hate to say this because it's throwing some agents under the bus, but I know agents that have been in the business forever and they're doing condo deals, and I've had conversations with them about what the Sears looks like, the structural integrity reserve study, what the Sears says and the financial implications. And I hate to say this, they're clueless. They have no idea, and it's the easiest resource to tap into. And set expectations in your seller and give a positive spin to your buyer when the opportunity arises. It's so quick to figure out what it says. I can't even understand why people wouldn't learn it. What do you got, Alex?
Going back to the condo pricing, even new buildings, I'm starting to see some chipping at, for example, they're offering HOA for the full year. I've seen that in a couple of developments, and then I've also seen that prices aren't, where they probably should have been if everything was continuing to go upward. So I definitely agree with you there, not just on the old, but new ones too.
I heard an interesting discussion on the new condo sales, and it's just amazing what's happening in Palm Beach County, and I'm sure it's Miami's the same way. And I'm not so familiar with the Fort Lauderdale market, but a lot of these projects that went on the board we see coming out of the ground now, they went on the board 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Their permits were applied for 5 years ago, and the concept for the condo didn't go on the table for 2 or 3 or 4 years before that. So some of these things are, 7, 8, 9, 10 year projects, and they'll go in under one economic cycle and they'll come out under another economic cycle. So what the builders have to do to make the sales at the time is, you want to say, like, how can this be? So many buildings are coming out of the ground simultaneously, but I'm seeing tons more properties, and I'm considering doing it myself. They're for sale, and people are considering renting. I mean, you just can't afford to carry it. Now you're going to have a glut of sold properties, listed properties now going on the rental market. It's just a cyclical thing. But
I'm waiting for the day. I remember prior to the crash in 08, when things were winding down, and like in 07, of the developers selling new construction, giving decorator credits at closing, where they were basically writing checks to the buyers to buy the property. I remember those days.
And don't you love these builder developers that tell you, oh, we're not making any money? You go to these new construction, they're like, oh, we're selling it right. But literally they'll sell the first few units in the subdivision for 700 grand or 800 grand. Then the last few units out, when the market starts to turn, 600 grand with bonuses. And the people who bought earlier are like, oh my God, what are you kidding me?
Yep.
Try to
Builders.
keep the prices up in 07, they were giving these decorator credits at closing of like $50,000 to $100,000 in cash, like that they got back.
At what price point?
Those were like 300, 400 grand price points,
And they would do $100,000.
Well, 50 on that price.
Yanique's eyes are like wide open.
Like they were giving 50 grand back to the buyers. The buyers literally make money when they bought the condo, especially if they got one of those, negative AM 3% down loans that, that they were doing back then. It was crazy. That's what they were doing to sell the units at the very end.
Wow.
It was a rush. I do want to add this one thing because we did a bunch of webinars on this. I don't know if you guys just got the email from the Beaches MLS just now as we were doing the show, Jim, but they just updated their terms and conditions and new compliance guidelines that if you don't sign a buyer broker's agreement and they catch you, it's $1,000 for the first offense.
What?
$5,000 for the second offense. Yep.
Serious?
$1,000 if they catch you without signing a buyer broker agreement. And it says right here, the written buyer broker agreement update, it says you have to have it signed before you show them the property.
I got a bunch of calls from agents recently.
Jeez.
And I got one yesterday. I got a text from an agent, and they gave me a little fact pattern, and they had a client that said, "We're going to report you to FREC." I am not going to tell you that FREC has no teeth. I'm just going to say I've helped agents through a lot of FREC inquiries, hearings, and typically they're not hard on agents because a lot of people say, I'm going to report you. You know, as soon as they're not happy with an outcome, I get it all the time. Yesterday, a client said, "Oh, I'm going to file a Google review. You know, I'm going to post a Google review on you." Typically, FREC is not hard on agents. For them to come out and say it's $1,000 and $5,000 per violation.
Well, it's not FREC. This is the MLS. I don't think FREC has anything to do with the, the NAR settlement, right? Because this
The
is coming from the
implementation?
MLSs, right? The MLS has made this decision to do this, the buyer broker agreement. So if your MLS is,
I've never been involved in an MLS
yeah,
imposed penalty.
yeah.
But,
No,
but it's still, I still have the same comment. Like, that's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
I wonder if they're going to be like having people go around, the MLS go around and asking buyers
testers?
agents when they're showing a property, can we see a
Testers?
buyer broker agreement? I mean,
Yeah, there's absolute testers. When Nar Sitzer was first settled, there were testers out there. We didn't know what the penalties were, but there were testers out there for sure.
anyway, wanted to add that to the discussion. Let everybody know.
I hate to say it, they're just older people looking for a little extra income, and they become a tester.
Yeah.
Not that I'm older or would be looking for extra income, but all right, you guys, it's been real and it's been fun. If anybody has any questions, text me. It's 11:03. It's always a pleasure. This is the best part
This
of
was
my.
a good one. This was a really good one, Jim. I mean, it literally hits at the heart of the issue that I'm dealing with personally right now with the divorce and the portability. Incredible.
I'm happy to hear. All right. See you guys.
Thank
All right,
you so
guys,
much.
thanks. All right, thanks. Bye.